Hey bro, what's up?
Not much, man. Just chilling. Just
Nice.
got back from a friend's place, just hanging out, just having a couple drinks, and now here we are. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
there we go.
I'm just gonna tweet this out real quick.
Yeah, cool.
How's your day so far?
So far so good. I just made dinner, so I'm like cutting up the steak that I made, and then I'm ready to rock. How about your day?
Well, it's pretty good. Like I just hung out with some friends I haven't seen in a while. So I was there, had some uh they got some fish. I think it was like halibut or something. Something I haven't had in a while that I was like, oh damn. Uh, but these particular friends, they go for the bougier items, so I knew it was going to be a good meal.
Oh, nice. It's always good to get a good meal in.
Yeah, I usually just, I'm the kind of guy I just throw whatever's in the fridge, it's like nothing crazy.
Yeah, I'm definitely a eat to live, not a live to eat kind of guy.
Well, well, it's kind of funny because I was a chef for like many
Oh
years,
wow.
and now I just don't nearly put as much effort into food anymore. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's just for survival and so I can keep buying NFTs.
Yeah, it's like I used to be a improv comedian, and I don't watch much improv now because it's like, oh, I'm so tired of this shit. Like, I've seen every possible combination of like things, so it's like it has to be really good to kind of impress me. So it's I've fallen back from it more recently.
I remember a buddy and I, when we were going to school together, we used to go to this one bar and they had improv nights, but it could be anybody that just walks up and does their bit. And it was hilarious watching him go up there after like we had like two or three jugs of beer.
Oh, yeah.
He'd go up and do his thing and sometimes he'd kill it and other times he'd be like getting booed off stage and we'd just be like, all right, we're out of here. But yeah, it was always fun seeing all the people coming up there and doing their bit because nobody there was like a professional per se.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, we used to do jams in the theater that I performed at because I was like a house team member. So those jams are always really good for you as like a practicing comedian because you like as a good improviser should be able to make someone who's not really good at it look good. That's the challenge. Like no matter how sucky your partner is, if you go up with another person, if you're good, you can make anybody look good. So I used to love that because it's like it's so many variables, so many unknowns. Sometimes you get up with somebody that's absolutely nuts, and you just kind of make it work, you know?
oh, I bet you have those times where there's just that chemistry and you just both like you're in like a groove and you're just like killing
Yeah.
it on
And then there's
stage.
times where people are just batshit crazy, and it's about matching their energy, because then that will make it work as well. Like if they're crazy, if you kind of go with, if you
Yeah.
mirror them, you have a better chance of it actually being entertaining than like trying to rationalize it, like some people tend to do.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, because I mean, ironically, if you have a crazy guy up on stage, you're like, man, I gotta up the crazy up a little bit here, otherwise I'm gonna look like the one that doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I had this one guy, like in improv, you're not really supposed to argue. Like you try to avoid fighting and denying reality. So if me and you're in a scene and you're like, hey, we're at the beach, I should be saying yes to that versus going, no, we're not at the beach, we're in the driveway. So this guy was like that. So we like whenever he came up on stage and I played with him, I would just mirror the hell out of him. And it ended up us like screaming at each other in each other's face. And then the end of the scene, it's like we both have dementia and we don't know where we are. It's funny as hell. And it's like, all right, yeah, you just gotta match that energy sometimes.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny.
Have you been looking at anything?
I'd like to see that
Yeah,
someday.
it's a lot of fun. I haven't done it in Nashville. There's no real improv theaters here, so I haven't had a chance. I mean, there are theaters, but they don't do jams. They have like classes, and I could do classes, but I've done so many classes at this point. It's like I just want to get up on stage and play. I don't care who it's with or like what, you know. I'll make it work.
Yeah, totally. I hear ya.
Is there anything in particular on the bazaar that you feel like you're keeping an eye on since so much crazy price movement in terms of Ghost and or like somewhat dipping prices for wearables if you're measuring it in Ghost?
I was actually quite surprised about well, not surprised. I was not surprised, I should say, about what's happening with wearables right now. Uh, you have like a lot of wearables that are dipping because, like you said, the ghost prices is taking off a little bit. But at the same time, I was surprised to see some wearables that I thought would dip that didn't. So like the pajama hats, for example, I was going to stock up on those.
Yeah, I bought one last
And
week.
they're at like, oh, you're smart. Yeah. I think they're at like, let's see here, 50 ghost or something like
I
that.
think 55, but I checked because I did my inventory for the week like an hour or two ago, or it might have actually been a little longer than that. But I did it. No, it was this morning. I did the inventory, so it was like a lot of what surprises me is the common wearables have held up very well, where like some of the what's it called? The legendaries have fallen in price. Like the baby bottle that I have a couple weeks ago was over 1,000 ghosts, and now it's sitting around like 700, 740. I bought it at 300, so I'm still doing really good. But it was like watching the commons and even the uncommons, their prices are holding steady.
What's up,
I
gentlemen?
think that's because of the liquidity. Oh, hey, Master Yin, what's going on?
Not much. Sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to say hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh yeah, of course. We were just talking about the wearables and what we think has been happening with the price of Ghost going up. It seems like some of the legendary wearables have dipped down, and probably some of the mythicals too. Hey, um,
I
and
don't own any
and
mythicals, so I don't really pay attention to their price because I'm just jealous whenever I see them. Same thing with the godlights. I don't even
yeah.
want to look at the price on the godlights.
Oh yeah, it's been months since I looked at that, but it seems like a lot of the commons are holding up because maybe because of the liquidity, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, last time we were talking, I don't know if Dr. Wagney ever ran the numbers, but I really wonder, like, what's the actual, like, ratio of, like, total items to total gotchis, including, like, all the slots that a gotchi could equip, because I think that that's what's holding all the floors and whatnot together. I mean, like, even for a common, 1,000 items is just not that many.
I did do some rough math. What was it? Last week I'd done some rough math on that. And I think there's roughly, if you look at all the wearables just for the items, just whatever they are, you're looking at about 50, I think it was like 55,000 wearables, like individual items, to 25,000 gotchis. So it's like a 1 to 2 kind of ratio. But I didn't check to see, like, I didn't break it down by hand wearable or like head wearable. I just looked at the overall quantity
Yeah, I mean,
versus how many
assuming
Aavegotchis.
there's 7 slots, right? Like, it would be even worse. Like, not even going into the nitty gritty of like which wearables for which slot. If there's 7 slots times that many gotchis, it doesn't even divide like into the number. So yeah, I think the wearable floor will be greatly probably adjusted or affected depending on what they do for the next wearable auction, which I'm sure like they're planning. I think you all maybe talked about it a little bit this past weekend.
Yeah, oh totally. And I think the team is going to weigh heavily towards renting out the wearables versus like diluting the whole market by just like flooding the market with a bunch of wearables. I think that's unlikely to happen just based on like the moves they made just recently with Gotchi renting. I feel like wearable renting will be like the next thing because they're probably looking at all these wallets with all these gotchis. Some have hundreds of gotchis, and they're going to be underutilized like accounts if they're not able to rent them out. So I think they'll look at the wearables the same way because like I've accumulated a ton of common and uncommons.
Did they mention anything about like when you lend out a gotchi, if it's already wearing the wearables, is that just going to go with it?
Yeah, so from what I understand, whatever the gotchi is wearing is what will be like rented out essentially. So there'll be like builds. I think Gotchi builds will be like a big deal for renting. Like certain builds of Aavegotchis will be more popular for renting than others. And I think we mentioned in last week's space that uh, a lot of the higher BRS Gotchis may not get rented out as frequently as something that's just very playable and very able to be able to farm the Alchemica.
I noticed that a little bit of the meta conversation around like a 50-50-50-50 gotchi came up too in the talk this weekend, which, I kind of had my suspicions that perhaps like a low BRS gotchi with balanced stats would be useful. But I'm actually a little worried now that it's going to be even more useful than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, I picked up a Gotchi like at the very beginning in April when I first started, and I thought this thing wasn't that great. Like it was just literally the lowest floor gotchi I could find at that time, and it's actually it's looking like one of my more balanced Aavegotchis now, and I think it'll be useful
Did you like
in the
kind of
realm.
glean that from like its use in mini games and whatnot?
Actually, ironically, the one game that made me realize the impact of the stats was this one Aavegotchi game that came out earlier called Gotchi Gatherer. I think it was like either the first or the second Aavegotchi game that was released. And the stats heavily affected how well your Aavegotchi would perform in that game. So that kind of made me realize the importance of the stats when I was playing that.
Yeah, the energy mattered a lot because my most powerful Aavegotchi was pretty useless in that game, versus my least rare one was like really kicking butt. And even in this past game, stats mattered, and having what you equipped mattered more so than I feel like other games. So it's like a good little peek in the potential of like what's going to come, next as we do more mini games and also more in-game play.
Yeah, I think even so, I know the maker of the last game pretty well, and I brainstormed some of this stuff with him that ended up kind of making the final cut, and I think he's really excited and to continue to kind of work in like how items can be affect your gotchi in games, and like even beyond. So he had the spacesuit, and then he added the little bubble spacesuit later, like in the second day of the game. But he kind of had them like Easter eggs where like nobody really knew until the word started getting out. But he could have gone a little further, and he could have like threw in the hazmat suit. There's a couple of other like spacey kind of things that maybe like would have fit in. So that's really exciting for like somebody that's a game maker, just to have like a lot of fun with thinking about these things, and how stats and items can be good or bad in their mini game. And I think that's one of the cooler things that is really interesting about your gotchi is like, hey, has this extensibility, depending on who's creating an app for you to interact with, that they know like, hey, these are the parameters, they're set in stone, they're in the blockchain, like this is what I could use, and this is the stat distribution, right? Which I think there'll probably be like more work around that area in the future, just kind of making that more transparent, like especially with the ARS and all that.
Yeah, I think there'll be certain games that will actually influence the price of Aavegotchis just because we haven't really even rolled out any real sort of like, I mean, there's incentive during rarity farming to play games with XP and whatnot, but I feel like going forward, there are going to be more rewards available as people take these games and build them onto their parcels as dApps. And then you'll have maybe other people coming in funding prize pools and funding like tournaments and whatnot. And at that point, there'll be a certain type of Aavegotchi maybe for that specific playing style or game that will become more valuable. And who knows, that might be the more balanced ones.
Yeah, I'm seeing people generally like so last week and the week before, I spent a little time on the floors, and I was kind of seeing people kind of favor gotchis that could either carry a lot and had high spook for defense or really low spook, and then really fast gotchis that also were really high defense and really evasive. Because I think there's like a little bit less certainty around how brain is going to work, and aggression as well, where there's like more clear, meta that like, hey, speed is going to help you collect faster, and low, energy or high energy is going to help you collect faster. Low energy is going to help you carry more. And then, the whole high spook for defense and low spook for evasiveness. So have you guys gotten any clarity, like, more around like aggression and brain?
Well, as far as aggression goes, like as much as I know now, the low aggression is going to be in regards to like spell casting, but we don't know what spell casting really means. Like, are gotchis going to have buffers and like debuffers that you have in many other games? Because that would make sense for that. And then for high aggression, you have higher physical damage, which makes sense. So like they're playing off the two kind of archetypes you see in like games like RuneScape, where you have your mage character who's gonna have like obviously better spell casting, and then you have like the melee like physical damage guy who's going to be able to inflict physical damage with high aggressiveness. So there's that. And I feel like those are very fitting, but again, like you said, those aren't as solidified like in the meta, and they could be up for change. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so when I kind of ran out of like my price range for like, high spook, high energy, or like high spook, low energy kind of gotchis, like I kind of started rolling into the other ones, kind of just assuming like, hey, everybody's gonna play like the defense or evasion stat, right? Like that's gonna be relevant for any gotchi. But like, let me grab some of the like, high brain or low brain and mix that with the spook. So it's like been a lot of fun to kind of think about potentially the meta. And it seems like a big portion of the game is like around collecting the alchemica, and like in its like physical form, right? These little squares that you see like potentially like in the gameplay. So like it's cool to think about that for sure.
yeah. And I was thinking with certain stats that I have uh, for uh, for my farming gotchis, I was actually looking at those stats, thinking maybe the travel speed's like a little too low. Like like I have an Aavegotchi that has like a energy of like 4. So like making him an energy of 0 might not actually make any sense because that Gotchi might move just like so slow that like it wouldn't even make sense to use him for farming. So I actually had to see if I could find wearables that would like increase his energy so it's around like a 10 or a 15. But I mean, I guess having a low energy Aavegotchi is good because it gives you that extra room to bump it up if you need to with some wearables.
Yeah, it's almost like if it's low
But I was
low
thinking
energy,
that.
it's also gonna have to have like good like spook either on the right or the left side. That way, like it's got a high carrying capacity, but it can like take hits and just keep moving, nice, slow, and steady. Um, but it's crazy, like how the meta is gonna evolve around like collecting these little gems like throughout the map.
Actually, that's a really good point you make with the high spook, high evasiveness. What did you say? High spook was higher defense, and lower spook was higher
Yeah, that was my
evasiveness. I don't quite
understanding. I
remember
don't know
the.
if anybody else had
Yeah,
heard that.
I think you're. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they had said. That low spookiness would be higher ability to evade, and then you'd have a higher spookiness would be like a higher defensiveness. I think you're right on that. And then the brain stat, I I think the brain stat was a higher brain would mean higher accuracy, which kind of makes sense. And then a lower brain, like really dumb gotchi, would just be like hitting you really fast. I guess it'd be uh higher hit speed or higher hit rate or something like that, maybe. But those things might change, right? They might be up for discussion. And I think the main one right now is the energy in relation to movement speed and carrying capacity. Those really make a lot of sense.
I think that makes sense if you're out in the grid or in the Citadel trying to collect Alchemica. I don't think I wonder how much of it like it will matter for when you're if you're just on your plot of land, harvesting.
That's a great point, actually. There'll definitely be like Citadel gotchis and like wild gotchis.
Yeah, because I would want a Gotchi that's a little more battle ready if I'm out in the grid dealing with liquidators constantly. Or like we were talking about high BRS. I think high BRS will come into play if you're trying to take it to the arena, like if we're settling differences in the arena. But if you're just farming, I wonder how much of an impact your stats will really have if you just, because your harvester is really the one with the stats for the farming. And I'm not sure if you're going to have to, do we know if like once I clean out my harvester, do I have to like carry it all to like an exchange, or will it be an in-game exchange that that's in the metal in the menu? It's hard to know.
I think they mentioned something about emptying out like the reserve pool or something like that. I heard that somewhere. And then I, for farming, I would think that maybe the stats would matter more for like spillover and whatnot. Like, like how they talk about there's going to be spillover in your plots even when you're like harvesting and whatnot. Because I've seen like gameplay screenshots of like you being in your actual plot. I mean, I can't speak to whether they were like out in the Citadel or out in the wilds, in the grid, but I remember seeing like the harvester kind of, and then like this spilled alchemica like around it. So maybe like it would be less annoying if your gotchi was fast to like pick that up and work the land.
Yeah, I know they mentioned the idea that your reservoir, someone has to empty it because if not, then it's going to stop collecting alchemica. So I wonder how much it'll play in that, the actual like
Yeah.
emptying it of it, like what the mechanic for that will be.
Yeah, I'm just like reading the little thing on reservoirs on the in the light paper, and it just says reservoirs store the alchemica harvested. Initially, the storage space is quite small, but it can be upgraded over time. So, I guess if you have harvesters going on your land, you want to make sure that your reservoirs are also being upgraded in tandem with them, because if you're just upgrading your harvesters, you're going to run into the same problem of not having any room to keep that stuff.
Do we know if, like, say I have a spacious that's a 32 by, what was it, 64? Or I forget the exact, 32 by 32? No, it's 32 by 64. Do we,
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
put multiple harvesters on that one piece of land?
Well, I think they did say you can do multiple harvesters going at the same time.
Okay, that's
So,
good.
I mean, maybe you could have like 9 level 1 harvesters instead of having like one level 9 harvester going.
Yeah, because
You might not get the same yield
yeah,
though.
because then the same question is like, if I could put multiple harvesters, or say I have one harvester, but I put multiple reservoirs, will I be able to have those multiple reservoirs connected to a single harvester, or have some kind of parallel, like, series of like, multiple harvesters that empty out to multiple reservoirs depending on which ones are full, like that? I mean, that might be getting too far ahead of us, but that'd be pretty dope.
Yeah, I mean, these little things will matter for sure. One of the things I've been thinking about lately is like, they have a lot of like game design decisions to make soon. Sometimes like those can make or break games. So, I mean, they make galaxy brain decisions thus far. So I have a lot of confidence in it. But I can imagine us like the meta evolving constantly through patching, which I was also thinking about like, what's the client going to be like? It's obviously going to run in the browser and whatnot, but like, it's going to be interesting. Like, how are they going to have this persistent world with all these connections and people in it, right? Because it's obviously just a challenge period in gaming and computer science and whatnot. But even more interesting when you involve like the graph and just kind of how the data is stored and whatnot. But the even what you're like speculating about will really matter, right? Because like it somehow people will find like what is like an OP way to do something, and then like things might be patched, right? Or like an OP weapon will come out and whatnot. So I think it's kind of cool that they keep it shrouded in mystery, but it makes it really interesting when you're deploying capital.
Yeah. It sometimes probably feels like deploying a large amount of capital probably feels like fishing in the dark sometimes, because you don't really know, like you have a rough idea of where you're going, but you don't know exactly if you've just struck gold or if you're just going to have like a small advantage.
I think that's an interesting parlay for the conversation. What are your two guys' strategies for the land auction coming up? What do you think about it? Are you excited? Like, do you know already what you're going to do exactly? Have you been studying the map?
Yeah, so for me, go ahead, no future
No,
actually.
I'm chewing, so
I
that's why. Oh, sorry, you could go.
uh okay, all right. I'll let you finish. Uh yeah, so for me personally, I actually went in pretty heavy on the first one. We'll see if that was a good decision or not, but I ended up grabbing like 10 parcels on the first one. I got like a spacious, I got 6 reasonables, and I got like 3 humbles on the first one. And I kind of have them scattered around. They actually kind of form a ring around the west wing of the citadel. So essentially it'd be like a ring where I could just teleport to any part of the citadel in the west. But now I'm thinking I kind of want to have that same ability on the right side of the Citadel on the east wing as well. So I'm thinking, because I don't have a lot more capital left, I'm going to be looking at probably mostly humbles for the next one and just grabbing like 3 or 4 humbles to have that optionality for teleporting. And that's mainly my strategy is going to be mainly around that.
Yeah, for me, I have not looked at the map really. I'm probably just going to spray and pray with the whole. The idea for me is like I want to. My whole goal is bid to earn and to not get caught with anything, any open bids by the end of the first hour or two of this auction. And then I'm going to cherry pick what I want at the end of the auction. But a lot of this is very, it's going to depend 100% on if I sell some other NFTs. I've been waiting to sell a cool cat for months at this point, but I'm like finally getting very close to doing it just so I can like put that all into Ghost and go like really heavy into this auction. But I don't think I want to have any open bids by the end of day one. And I'll cherry pick what I want after. Because I'm not, to be honest, I don't know what to expect from this auction. It's lower supply, but I feel like there's going to be more demand because we know more guilds are coming in, more partnerships are happening. But, you know, we all also have land for sale in the bazaar. So will the floors meet that, at least that price, or will they exceed the current prices? It's kind of hard to tell at this point.
That's a really interesting dynamic now that there's like parcels on the bazaar, because now it's like, well, even for the whole bid to earn strategy, you kind of know, where it should end up, right? So I think people are going to be even maybe a little bit more aggressive in their bids, trying to, make a higher spread in the bid to earn system. But then you're right. Like you have that whole juxtaposition of like, well, this is like, I think, half the supply, if not 1/3 of the supply of the last auction, including the giveaway as well. So it's been hard for me too, because I've been thinking like, so the first one, like you guys, like, and I think like most people right now that have been around, like, I blew a lot, except for I know Dr. Wagme said last one that he was conservative and he didn't go in on the first one, but there are definitely a lot of people that are exhausted source wise. So it's like I have to really think even more strategically than before. But I've really been looking at the center of the map, and I've really been looking at the Great Portal and kind of like trying to put myself in like the shoes of a Gotchi that like just comes in for like the first time and it's just like, all right, well, whoa, I just got into like this like world, like, I'm going to walk out of this, right? And you kind of can see like some roads that are kind of carved in there. And I've been paying a lot more attention to the roads and what that means for the game and, for dApps and for all these things. So I've been having a blast looking at the map. And I actually speculate that it's going to be a lot more competitive than anyone is anticipating, especially because there's so much organization going on now. And I think guilds are moving quickly to get organized. DAOs are moving quickly to get organized and try to get ready for this next auction and to stake their claim, especially the ones that missed the first one. But I will tell you, Hefe, I believe that the Genesis lands, like I'm a big kind of proponent, and like I like to study like information theory and kind of just like the fact that like it was first and there's all this gravity and all this decision making and all this strategy that was put into the first auction, into this Genesis, right? That does have weight, and it's kind of hard to completely eliminate kind of like, that effect, in my opinion. So, I think this one's going to be a blast, and I think there's way more people involved, even more than there was in the last one, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Hey everybody,
I
do, you
mean,
mind, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Hey.
As like a sort of newbie, it's like a newbie sort of question, someone that's new to the game, new to the ecosystem.
Of course.
So yeah,
Of
so
course.
I mean, I've done a lot of research over the past week on Aavegotchi. I really, really like the sound of the game. I love the mechanics. I love, where it's sort of heading. And I've got quite a lot of capital, to deploy in the game. But at the moment, I'm kind of, I don't know if it's a buy up, some really high rarity characters. I don't know whether to wait for the land sale, and go heavily into that. I mean, as somebody who's sort of really new to the game, I mean, what would be the things that you would suggest, to prioritize at this point in time? And, what are the things that potentially you may have done wrong, when you started the game? And how would you sort of, what would you suggest, people really focus on, that are new to the game?
Well, I would suggest the focus here should be like try to get some land. You can always get gotchis, but I think the land is going to be the higher yielding thing right now, unless you're going the rental route where you're going to be renting out your gotchis. In terms of like, I guess, mistakes, like I would say this, like just from my previous experience in season one, our second season of rarity farming is going to end in about a week and a half. So I predict, depending on when the game launches and what mini games come out, there's probably going to be a dip across the ecosystem, because after season one ended, wearables dropped in price, everything dropped because there wasn't really, the game had like kind of went on pause until the next haunt was announced. So in this case, it really does depend on when they actually launch the game. If it launches at the end of December, like the plan is, then there's not going to be much of a down period. So for me, I would be looking to buy that dip that happens after the end of season 2, because people will, theoretically, they're going to undress their gotchis, they're going to sell excess inventory to get more liquidity. But it's hard to say because between now and the launch of the realm, we don't really know how much time that is. Like it could be as short as like the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
And as far as going into the next land auction, I would say, especially for someone who has a large amount of capital to deploy and doesn't actually have any land yet in the game, the spacious parcels, the largest size of parcel, make up about roughly 20% of all the parcels available in the Citadel, whereas the reasonable and the humble make up the other 80%. So, like as far as scarcity goes, the spacious parcels not only offer the best value in terms of how much resources are locked up in there for what they went for in the last auction, but also they have the scarcity is skewed heavily towards the spacious parcels that only have 20% of supply.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That's really good to know.
I would say for a gotchi, decide what you want your gotchi to do. That's something I didn't do too much like when I first got into the game, right? Like, is this going to be a gotchi with the intentions of rarity farming, like, or am I buying this gotchi to like play in the realm, and like what is my objective in the realm? And I think that those things have become so much clearer in the past like 60 days with all the kind of news that they've been dropping and all that alpha about how the game is going to work. And like, if I could go back in time, I'd probably pick my first gotchis a little bit differently, just paying attention to the stats more. And, rarity farming, I don't know. I think about this often. I don't know what their long-term kind of strategy is going to be for rarity farming to maybe make it more inclusive and involve more people. Like even making 13, 5 ghosts, 20 ghosts is like great, especially like on an NFT like that's producing a yield that's like incredible, right? That's not a really big thing. But it is getting increasingly more expensive to, make a significant amount of capital rarity farming, where I think eventually the top 100 will only be like older players that have been in the game for a while, and then also DAOs and guilds that like kind of come together on this like one player, right, on this one gotchi to try to push it and produce revenue for the guild or the DAO. Etc. So I really have focused in the last like 30 days, especially more on like gotchis for gameplay. That's kind of how I've been looking at it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I would also say really quickly, since you have capital, your best bet really is study the bid to earn auction. Look up some videos. I have live streams of it, so you get comfortable with the actual bid to earn auction. Because even if you go in with the intent of not winning, and you have a good idea of all the floors and what a decent prediction at what the floor level for this auction will be, you can increase your bag essentially 10 to 15, some people up to 50% return on these auctions. So you might be able to make that kind of flip by doing the incentivized bid to earn, losing. And then after the auction's over or at the end of the auction, you can take your winnings and that's what you invest into the land. So then you'll have more space to go into other stuff without risking additional assets. Like this is someone that I did an interview with recently said this is like an active yield farming event. So if you have the capital, this might be a really good idea if you study up and kind of get a good idea where the floors are and kind of how the auction works to avoid overbidding and getting stuck with stuff that you might not want, for you to turn your bag larger and then go in and buy stuff that you want.
Yeah. Okay. Because I mean, I've been looking at the bazaar and stuff. I've been speaking to some. I think it's a guy called Goobs actually. Sort of prominent community member, and I really wanted to buy, some gotchis, some really high rarity gotchis and stuff. But from what you guys are saying, it sounds like it might be a better play, to potentially bid on some land and then wait until, I think it was yourself that said no future. Potentially, there might be a little dip across the ecosystem. So if I can potentially increase my bag via, the bid to earn ecosystem, it might be better potentially, to wait to really sort of go heavily, into some of the gotchis with the higher rarity stats. So I understand at the minute people are sort of selling the gotchis, aren't they, to potentially try and buy some land. So I thought maybe now was a good time, to buy a gotchi. But from what you're saying, maybe it's best to sort of prioritise that land and buy a gotchi later down the line.
Well, I would say almost think of it like dollar average cost. Maybe buy 1, 2 gotchis, save some of your capital. Because the other thing is that we don't know for certain. We've talked about it in our weekly hangouts on Saturdays that rarity farming might completely change once the realm is launched. So like for this season of rarity farming, if I get the same, so far I believe through rarity farming, I've made back 10% of my entire investment just for this one season in the last 6 weeks. So if they do another season, then it's like, yeah, the clear, we're going with the rarity farming route. But I think that rarity farming, another season might not happen. We have to decide that, the DAO itself. And then for us to get another season, we're most likely going to have to do another haunt, which will increase the supply of gotchis, which also might be another great way to get some cheaper gotchis. But I will say, like, for me, like, if I was going to buy more gotchis now, I would look at H1 gotchis because it's a limited supply. We talked about these being the Genesis gotchis, so they have that extra collectability. So dollar average cost in, maybe get one gotchi now, one that you really like, and then don't go all in, at this point. Because it's so hard to tell what's going to happen next. But there's also that FOMO level because every day I check and Ghost has been like, Ghost was at $1 when like 80 cents when I first got in. And now it's almost, it's creeping up towards 3. So it's like I get this crazy FOMO like, damn it, I should have put more in. It's a tough decision. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, well,
there's definitely a repricing too going on. No, there's definitely a repricing because Ghost is moving pretty fast up, even with the bonding curve. And I think that like comp sales, like in Axie with this $2.3 million piece of land that sold recently, and it's just there's a lot of attention coming towards gaming, and Gotchi's kind of like a sleeper with a lot of substance, kind of diamond in the rough. There's so much high marketed stuff that's just crap, while Gotchi's just been plugging away. But with the price of Ghost going up, like certainly I'm even seeing, right, the floor is dropping out a little bit. It's sub 400 now. You can probably get a Gotchi for like 390, where like I'd say a week ago you were at 420, 450. Right. So and that has to do with like, hey, like Ghost is literally 50 cents higher than it was a couple weeks ago. So that takes time for that repricing. So I would agree with no futuristic with like, hey, certainly don't deploy 100% of your capital.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot for the guidance as well, guys. That's really useful. I'm really, I'm really interested and really excited actually, to get into the Aavegotchi space. So yeah, I can't wait. Can't wait to get my first gotcha.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in, man. Like, it's a fun place. It's one of the friendliest communities, so I love it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that attracted me to it. So yeah, brilliant.
Well, for me, I've been holding Ghosts from 70 cents, but yeah, I've participated in the B2N and other stuffs, but I haven't been able to actually go into the buying Gotchis and entering fully into the Gotchiverse because I don't know, I maybe I fully don't understand it, or maybe it's just because I have little capital. Like I just have 1,000 Ghost tokens in total, so I always do my maths like if I should just put in 390 Ghost in buying the Gotchis, and I don't know what if my money gets tied down and Ghost tokens keep pumping and all. So it's kind of hard for those who have smaller capital to really participate in the Gotchiverse and all.
So the Gotchiverse isn't launched yet, and I think that you'd be a perfect candidate for somebody that would rent a Gotchi because you may pay something like whatever, a 0.25 or half a Ghost, and then have a split with the Gotchi owner, and this will allow you to start, slowly working up, your bankroll without the risk of perhaps plunging into a Gotchi. The opposite side of that coin is that Gotchis may be more expensive. They may be less expensive when that time comes, right? But I think that what the game has done with this whole like lending model that they've constructed and kind of the way that they're going to scale this game will allow everybody to participate in the way that they want to, because 1,000 Ghosts is a lot of money, right? At $3 a Ghost, right? And it may be risky to go and you're not ready to drop, 400 or 500 Ghosts, half of your bankroll into a Gotchi, but you're perfectly fine taking a 30-day loan, at maybe half a Ghost a day, and you keep 80% of what you earn, and that's going to be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll actually add. Go ahead, actually, Dr. Wagner.
I was just going to add on that. I really encourage new people to the space to understand that Ghost is the least risky asset to own. It's deleveraged, right? It's cushioned by the bonding curve, and it's still yielding close to 50% APR consistently. So as you're learning the space, what a great opportunity to have a high ceiling, but also be earning great yield. There's an explicit opportunity with the bid to earn auction. To bid, I increase my stack 10 to 15% each time. And also, as we get close to the game debut, Alchemica is going to come out, and it looks like we're going to be building our own GAX, which means Alchemica is going to have to be paired with Ghost, and I expect some demand for Ghost as a result, as people are going to be trying to farm their Glimmer or Glamour accordingly. So I always leave at least 40 or 50% of my position in Ghost, and definitely encourage newcomers to the space to leave a high allocation in Ghost as well.
Yeah, especially with Aave staking coming very soon. If you have your Ghost on layer 2 right now on Polygon, you could stake it just for straight Frens, low risk. But once Aave allows Ghost to be a collateral, I see the coin blowing up, because there's just not, we'd be the only coin under $1 billion market cap on Aave. And depending on their rate of return, because we are a very stable coin in a lot of ways, I could see us getting a nice little return, which is going to cause somewhat of a supply crunch. More people are coming in because they want to stake their Ghost on Aave and then stake that AM Ghost, apparently, maybe, for Frens in the Aavegotchi protocol. So it's like, if you have the Ghost, stake it at the very least, and you should do good.
Definitely. I'm always really surprised to hear people spend all their Ghost, because it's such a valuable asset. And just comparing market caps to similar projects, we are so far ahead of where they're at, and our market cap is so small that you really can't have enough Ghost.
But I love the Gotchis.
I have my Ghost staked on the Stake Ghost website. I'm earning Frens now, so I'm just waiting for when I could actually use the
Nice.
So that's what's up.
People, I know Dr. Wagney has said he's gotten very good returns on the raffles, but you can also just sell the tickets. Because with 1,000 Ghosts, you're making a drop ticket every 10 days, which is like, what, 10 or 11 Ghosts? So that could be a way for you to slowly grow your Ghost bag, or just, try to actually win a Gotchi or a piece of land or some wearables in the raffle.
All right, thank
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally hear you. I totally hear and validate your concerns about, someone new coming into this ecosystem. You don't know exactly what you should buy, because there's so many nuances. There's so many different things you got to look at for rarity and whatnot. But all the advice here that people are giving you is like, it's really relevant advice for someone who has 1,000 Ghosts. And like for me personally, if I had 1,000 Ghosts, I would be like No Future was saying, I would be staking it, and then I'd be taking the Ghost that I'd make from my friends, by selling raffle tickets, and you can use that to even look for other opportunities in the marketplace, because that's Ghost you earned. You might be able to look at some common wearables or something that you feel might be valuable, because you're not using any of your own capital at that point, but the wearables have done actually quite well because they are a lot scarcer than the Gotchis or the land. But yeah, I mean, speaking of Gotchi, this is a great segue into Gotchi renting. This Gotchi renting is going to be huge for people who otherwise maybe could afford some land, and maybe they bought some humble parcels through the GBM auction, but don't have any Aavegotchis to farm them. Whereas there's plenty of us that have, maybe Aavegotchis we bought earlier on, and I can only play with one at a time. So I'd be happy to rent the other ones out, so people could actually farm their resources.
So I think another driver of this that's like massive is like there's a lot of people that bought a lot of land, and I don't know the answer of how many gotchis really per piece of land, or like, hey, can one player scale to 5 pieces of land, right? Like these are all things that kind of have to be figured out, and obviously like interfaces will help and whatnot. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the position where they have a lot of land and a lot of gotchis, and they believe in the game, and they invested in their money, and they took the risk, and they're going to need help to really, kind of monetize their investment. And this is great for all the players that perhaps couldn't invest that much at the time, because it's a symbiotic relationship. And it allows like people to, grow within the system, and make wealth and money together by playing a game. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the potential white paper that is supposed to come out for the realm. I don't know when it's going to come out. It should be, I mean, I would figure in the next few weeks, but I know they're working hard on it. But once we have that, then we'll be able to like really figure out a lot of the different like nuances of everything.
The bazaar is going to go crazy after that white paper comes out.
Yeah, that's why you were saying like you try to keep 50% of your ghost in like as ghost, your capital. But I'm horrible at that. I'm like I think I'm at probably close to I want to say 95% of my capital that's in this like game is all like it's spread between wearables, land and gotchis. Like I'm like I do have ghost stake, but like I can't hold on to it because then I see a deal on the bazaar and I'm like, nope, this is going to be worth like double this probably in a few months. So I end up spending all my money.
My weak spot is portals. I can't help but open them. So I literally had to send them all to my brother because I couldn't help myself.
Have you been doing
That is, I do not have the willpower to keep them closed.
Same here. Like I bought a bunch to hold, and like I think like a week later, I just ripped them all open. I mean, that's actually something that I'll tell people. Like, hey, like I know it's hard. Portals are pretty expensive, but it's a great experience. Like it's a great part of the gameplay, and just having the chance of like scoring a high BRS Gotchi, I think is like really cool, and everyone should maybe experience that at least once. I've gotten some like I'm sure like many here, I've lately been making a push like with my in real life family and friends, and like a lot of them have been like super receptive to Aavegotchi and just clicks with them, and they're like, I want to figure this out and I want to do more, and I've had them buy a portal, and I had a cousin that he's already flipping land, buying a humble parcel and just flipping it for 30 more ghosts, and like it's really cool to see the game like work at all levels. And I'm really excited because the uptake, even amongst, all my in real life people, is pretty high. Like they're much more receptive to something like this for some reason. Just like NFTs have that penetration. Gotchi seems to be like this thing where they're like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, that sounds cool. That's like cool. Like, oh, I've heard this metaverse thing. That sounds like something interesting.
Yeah, I think it's an easier sell.
It's crazy how Aavegotchi appeals to that social aspect. Like people see the social aspect of Aavegotchi way easier than they see it in other games and metaverses. That like I've talked about Aavegotchi to a few people. It's a very easy concept for them to grasp onto, and especially once you talk about the social aspect. You're going to have these parcels of land where you can interact with each other and hang out with other gotchis. I know Gravy, for example, he's mentioned a few times from GeckoCon when he was there talking to some older folks. They were kind of outside of the normal demographic that we talk about for Aavegotchi, but even they were like, yeah, this is great. Like I can connect with my children. I can connect with my grandchildren. Like I think this will appeal to a large, wide audience once it actually goes mainstream.
The funniest thing is when someone looks over your shoulder and like they're like, what is that? Like, I can't even hide it from my kids. They're like, what are you doing, Dad? Like, it's like, I'm like, well, it's kind of complicated, like, but yeah, I mean, like, I think that with now, like, regardless of where ghosts and gotchi prices go, like with, and to loop it back to what we were talking about now with the rentals, it's like, all right, well, like here, look, like I bought this thing, like I have it, it's just sitting there, like come try it, like I'll give you a good split. You don't have to pay me any ghosts, you know the person in real life. And I think that's really great and awesome for adoption. And I'm super excited about that because like some people just don't get the whole like, hey, it's an economics game / an inventory game right now, plus the rarity farming. You don't really play in this world, but like once like the Gotchiverse is here and the realm is up, like it's like, all right, well here, just come play with me.
Oh, this Gotchi renting is going to be awesome for that. Like I have 3 siblings, younger siblings, and we've all kind of created like this little plan for farming, and I'm going to be renting my gotchis out to them, and we're going to be like building great stuff. And I actually don't feel like I've connected with my siblings like this in years. Like, it's been a really long time since I've kept in touch with them on this kind of level, but it's only because like we're going to be collaborating and like coordinating on a bunch of different things in the Aavegotchi in the Aavegotchi realm. And I think it's going to bring a lot of people together, and that social aspect is underrated.
Yeah, I wanna add to that amazingness of Aavegotchi as a kind of like something that people just intuitively get. Um, I was at a bar and one of my friends introduced me to a Bitcoin whale, and he was like a big supporter of XRP and ADA, and well, obviously not a great start. But he asked me then what am I really into? And I talked to him about NFTs, and I introduced him to the idea of generative art, and then I talked about Aave a little bit, and of course Link. And then I got to Aavegotchi, and that was the only thing that stuck with him. All the other ones, he was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. But then Aavegotchi, he like immediately took out his phone, looked it up, and he said, okay, this makes me feel really fucking old, and that's a good thing. Thanks for letting me know about it.
That's a great point. Like, and the nostalgia, I think that it's like well positioned, playing on like the whole, Tamagotchi, right? And like a lot of, kind of the concentration of wealth and cryptocurrency is kind of like this millennial, and I think that it is like a brand and a product that can bind generations, which is kind of the same vibe I get just from when you kind of like get that sweet spot in cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, like the non-scammy kind of stuff, right? And like I'm not here to opine on people's investments, but there is a certain like in my experience in cryptocurrency, like God, it's like this like spider sense is tingling, right? Like, oh, the pieces fit. Like the people that are around this are all intelligent. They're thinking about things deeper. Like, and in real life, and I've been talking with this like with a lot of people, right? Like, and then this whole idea that like boomer is a mentality. It's not really an age. And I think that like the people like in Aavegotchi and the NFT space and in cryptocurrency, like in many ways, although they may believe in different things, like their kind of belief in this technology and in these metaverses and like these kind of like social constructs that we're forming to be able to like organize and DAOs and this and that, like it's going to bring like all sorts of people together. And Aavegotchi is the sickest use of non-fungible token technology that I've ever seen and come across in any of the projects that I've been. I mean, I love generative art, yin and yang, like, we're big collectors on Tezos and on Ethereum, and, we do art blocks and we do all this fun stuff, but Aavegotchi just hits different. I'll just leave it at that.
I mean, there's
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
heard that there's
Bitcoin and Aavegotchi. Like, I mean, I'm a gamer since like the beginning, and a lot of those points like ring true to me in the sense of like this is on the forefront of what's happening, and like you said, spider senses are tingling, and in the sense of like this is kind of like the sickest use case, and like how people are forming and what we're like building on the forefront. It makes me feel very similar to like if I was I mean I was like in the probably like middle school back then when they first started like mining Bitcoin, but it kind of feels like back in that days or the beginning like the internet of like we're creating something completely new that no one else has created before, in a sense of like revolutionizing like $100 billion plus gaming industry, and that's no small feat to like undertake, and it's fun to be on the forefront, especially with a lot of like smart individuals like that I've been like talking to throughout the couple of months that I've been in this project, like especially everyone in this room. It's just like it's bringing so many different people together that it like I haven't had this feeling of like playing like a video like game since like maybe like when I was like in like middle school playing like RuneScape, like MMORPG of like what is possible with like bringing like communities together like within like a video game. And I haven't seen much like revolution since like probably like that game. I mean, you have like kind of like World of Warcraft was kind of like an intermediary, but like with like the NFTs and the functionality of like the individual ownership of assets within a game instead of the game fucking its users and just taking all of the like revenue and just like leaving you with assets that have no functionality outside of their ecosystem. Like you can't sell it and go to another game or sell it for profits or giving anything really back unless you're like a top player in like esports. Like it's total bullshit. Like you have to be like a content creator to be making like money from like wasting your time to playing a video game. Now you can actually like make money through a video game. And then like how you saying like this game just hits different like than anything that I've ever seen before. Yeah, I'd leave it at that too.
I'm super blown away with the DAO aspect of the districts. Like, you know, maybe
100%.
Hefe, you could talk to that because I know you know a lot about that stuff. Like the whole notion that like this grid and the Citadel is going to be a bunch of DAOs. And like now I've been thinking like, oh, I wanted to consolidate my lands, but I don't even know if I want to because I want to be involved in all these DAOs and I want to know what they're voting on and what they're doing in the Citadel.
I'm gonna be honest. A lot of my motivation for how I interact in our Discord and in general on social media around Aavegotchi, like trying to be unbiased and be like kind of just in general as a person, is because like I see the future when DAO politicians are going to be a thing, and I want that. I want to be a DAO politician. The idea of having people, from my district, I can represent the entire district via proxy vote, and the idea of building these DAO governments that we're going to have to represent us. So it's like, yeah, that's a dream for me. So it's like I've been very careful and I've been thinking about that since I heard Coder Dan mention it like a month and a half ago, because that blew my mind, the idea of the DAO politician.
Mind blown, dude. I've not thought of that.
I've been very interested.
I say it all the time.
Go ahead. Sorry, Hefe.
I was gonna say I just say it all the time. You know, like our Aavegotchi agate proposals function better than any democracy that I've witnessed, like in our country that I live in, or any other country for that matter, in the fact that there's true transparency because it's all on chain, and there's accountability because you know who wrote the proposal and you know who voted on that proposal. So there's full accountability and transparency there that we haven't seen ever. This is a new way. If you guys think about this is a new way humans are organizing themselves. Because as human beings, we don't have that intrinsic. Even you could be the most. You could be a saint, and you still won't have as much accountability as being represented on chain because everyone can see it, what you said, what you did. So it's a new way of humans to reorganize each other in a way that holds each other accountable and is very transparent. So that's going to create some things that I don't even think we really truly can fully grasp yet.
So Arthur Hayes put out a wonderful Medium post that was shared to me by Master Yang, and he just really goes deep on this, right? Like this idea of, what these DAOs mean for us and what we can organize and explore and the ideas that we can put into action with this new construct. And Aavegotchi, for me, right, because I've always, like, ever since I heard about a DAO, and, like, I wasn't even a huge Ethereum fan early on, but I knew that, like, hey, smart contracts, like, doesn't matter what cryptocurrency you believe in, these vendors or these autonomous agents are going to exist, right? So Aavegotchi, I've always wanted to, like, try a DAO, do a DAO, and Aavegotchi's like, hey, yo, here are your training wheels. Like, come play a game and learn how to, like, manage a DAO and a treasury and a guild bank. Not like WoW style, right? Like, no, like transparently, with votes, with a token, with governance, and the tools now are robust enough in the Ethereum ecosystem that I think that the mainstream user or like users like ourselves that perhaps aren't like power users within the Ethereum ecosystem from a dev perspective can now like play a game and learn how to use these tools, which will lead to positive consequences, in my opinion, in your real life.
I mean, this is a game, but no game no more. Like, this is real life.
I think this is like the DAO, as we understand it now, is just the first iteration. Imagine once we start getting more creative with AI. I mean, AI is still in its beginnings, but I could see that, who knows? I can't give a timeline. I don't know when, but at some point you might have autonomous agents in Aavegotchi that's like it's an Aavegotchi that's a DAO that's been funded by Ghost, and you vote and whatever you vote on is what this Aavegotchi is going to do in the realm, and it's not even a human being, you know.
Yes, like the Twitch
The
Let's
band
Play
bots,
Pokemon, you know? Like somebody could probably hook up a Aavegotchi that like a even bigger group, not even an autonomous agent or an AI, but like you can like do like Let's Play Pokemon on Twitch, but with an Aavegotchi in the realm, and like, you know, movement by movement, you know, crazy stuff like that. And like, which is, I think that stuff like this will happen because all I hear from the dev team is a lot of transparency about how they plan to make this like an open ecosystem, provide an SDK. You know, obviously some of it's not their choice because it's on chain, but obviously the actual game client will be a different story. But all I hear, and which makes me even more bullish and want to deploy more capital, is, you know, hey, we're going to allow developers to come and, you know, build things in Aavegotchi, which like, you know, has me super bullish and has me trying to organize around kind of the purpose of the guild that I've created and my team and all the people involved in trying to like figure out like how can we bring more developers to Aavegotchi when it's time to build, because this is going to benefit everybody in the ecosystem tremendously. And like having good documentation and like, you know, being very like transparent and, you know, with how the API works and like what is possible and what is not, like it's going to be rad because people are going to build stuff like young people, right? People that are still, you know, there is no age barrier for Aavegotchi. You know, there's going to be little savants in their garage that code up like autonomous agents within Aavegotchi that make all our lives way easier and make the economy more bountiful for all of us, which is nuts to me.
Yeah, anybody who's either coding right now or learning to be a dev and are going to be applying that skill to Aavegotchi's SDK, they're going to be the early architects of this new kind of system that we're talking about, which is huge. But like, I mean, I'm super stoked for all the things that are coming out, and I really appreciate the hangouts that we have every Saturday because that's like we get little breadcrumbs every Saturday, and and that's, I mean, some people probably wish that they got all the information on this white paper, which we'll get pretty soon. But like I kind of like the digging aspect. I like being analytical. I like digging for that alpha and finding that little piece of information that'll help me later on. Because that asymmetry of information right now is what's going to create a lot of wealth and a lot of also having the right people in there, right? If you have people digging around looking for the stats to back up their decisions, that's gonna attract just the right people. You know, instead of having a bunch of NFT flippers, I don't actually see a lot of NFT flippers in Aavegotchi because NFT flippers are actually somewhat deterred. I mean, we do have flippers, right? We do have market makers in Aavegotchi who find price discrepancies and make money off that. That's normal. But we don't have flippers per se that are coming in just to buy an Aavegotchi and just like flip it because it's really not worth their time. It's actually a deterrent because they might get burned. They might buy something that they think is worth a lot of money and it's not because they didn't do their research.
Well, they're also
Yeah, definitely.
incentivized to hold on to it because of rarity farming and what like the yield that it can gain off of the Aavegotchi. So, or like being able to rent it out. Why would you ever sell your Aavegotchi? Like if you can just rent it out for eternity, if there's as long as there's other users on the other end, of course. But and there's
Oops, I accidentally muted everybody. Sorry. Unmute yourself, Golden Rose.
oh yeah, sorry, all good. Yeah, I'm just saying like, well, yeah, why? Yeah, there's no flippers because of like that deterrent of like the ability to gain more yield off your Aavegotchi from holding on to your Aavegotchi than reselling it for like a speculative price. So like say like 2 times more like the next week, like some like off of some news like in the PFP market, like some news could pop up like or some big guy could get into a project and then it could jump up like half an ETH and then people could sell and then it could drop down the next week. Like that's we just don't see that in Aavegotchi.
Yeah, I think when people like got the information that like and really understood it and they were clear about like, hey, you're gonna rent these, that changed a lot of the game for a lot of people. And I think that new people coming in, and they do a good job of like, putting out information. But like a lot of people in this spaces right now, are kind of like, the hardcore kind of gamers of Aavegotchi at this moment. Like we're up, in the Discord, like we're in the chat, and I encourage anybody who's not to get up in there. But some of this information, like the game is deep enough that the alpha does not leak to the casuals as quickly as people that are like closer to the spigot, like listening as the game is kind of like figured out. Because I would say they're making some of these decisions kind of not in real time, but probably within 30 days, maybe sometimes of when they're executed. So, for sure, like it behooves those, and I think guilds will be massive for this, right? Not just scholarship programs for renting, but mentorship programs for kind of teaching people how to play the game. And like that's really cool because the game economy is wide enough that it allows for a lot of different specialization, from content creation, to scholarships that come with mentorships, to scholarships that are through rental, through casual renting, through trading on the bazaar. It's like a super wide amount of things for people to do. And like I said, like earlier, I started to see that in real life people that I introduced Gotchi to, because they all are kind of like taking their own little path. Because I'm like really like, hey, I dump and I redline them and I give them all the info, but then I just leave them alone. And like I kind of ignore them. And I'm like, look, I can't help you anymore, right? And then like as they start discovering the game, it's really cool to see like where they end up and where they start leaking me alpha. Like, oh my God, look at the floor of Humble. Like, look at this. Like, this is mispriced. I'm like, whoa, dude, like you found the game 3 days ago, But like people are really excited to play and figure out like what is like a good strategy, and that's part of the fun of the game, I think, and the allure, and I hope they do keep it that way for sure.
Yeah, like what's their strategy? Like, yeah, there's not one good strategy, but exactly like you were saying, like there's many paths to making it in the Gotchiverse. I actually just earlier had a big thread in which I was telling somebody who was like, oh, so you're into Aavegotchi, and they were like, well, when do you think Ghost will pump? And I said, like, I don't care about Ghost pumping. Honestly, I think a lot of other people who aren't in the Gotchi community are probably better at talking about like price predictions for Gotchi or Ghost, because we in the Gotchi community, we really don't look at the price. We don't care about the price. If anything, we wish it went down so that we get more Gotchis and wearables.
The curve is forever.
because the token's really just a cog, and the engine is the game itself. Like that's what like makes value for us. Like it's the experience of gaming, and then we're making money off of like the more or less obscure manifold mechanics that are beneficial to those who have more information than others, so yeah, Ghost, I'd rather it was almost like a stable coin, like it was for a long time, instead of starting to pump crazy, because I want my jersey, I want the agent set, and you name it.
That initial onion chart on the Aavegotchi wiki page, where you look at the introduction, it has like a little onion chart explaining what an Aavegotchi is. Yeah. I think that chart's very telling to all the different layers of depth that an Aavegotchi has. Like it's not just one thing. And the fact that you take care of this thing, like it's a pet, you have to engage with it twice a day. I mean, unless you have some auto petting service. But like my Aavegotchis are free range, I hand pet these things
organic
twice a day. It's organic petting.
Yeah, dude, I think we should somehow get
those. Kinship's huge.
Get those mechanically raised Gotchis different rating altogether. I'm really not about them. I think free range is the only way to go.
I think that's interesting because like the way that the game is designed, like it's on a blockchain, so there's only so much they can do, right, to limit contract interaction. And like I think that like in a weird way, because this game is so robust, there will be more things beyond like, let's say, automatic petting that kind of like annoy people, right? Or like seem like a weird game mechanic, or like, damn, that's kind of like annoying. Like it should just only be like, manual. I think there'll be other things that people kind of figure out with code and, and even deeper. I was thinking about it the other day is like, all right, well, I mean, like people are going to build custom interfaces to manage like kind of larger portfolios, right? And like that's totally open potentially for like a bunch of innovation and potentially even like revenue for somebody that's like, hey, I'm gonna like specialize in creating an interface that like allows me to manage a lot of gotchis, and a lot of plots, right? And like this will be in tandem with like what Pixelcraft does, which their interfaces might be sufficient. But I mean, anybody that's played World of Warcraft knows like, all the amount of add-ons that ecosystem fostered, which I thought was always like a really cool thing about WoW and for raiding. And like, I think that it would be kind of cool to see some of that in Aavegotchi as well. That way, like people can share their code and their good code, and then everybody could benefit, right? If you take a little bit more time and get into the meta and like get the tools to like be there, right? Like personally for us, like in our guild, I plan to offer like automatic petting as like an advantage because like I pet my gotchis and I pet them for months and months and months. And look, we all miss a day. It just is what it is, right? So, I mean, if you're competing for kinship and things like that is like potentially like, gonna put you back. So it will be interesting to see how they manage like people building exterior code that interacts with the game, because like that aspect is kind of like, I don't know, I guess it could like change how the contracts work and whatnot, but it is like a really interesting aspect of this game that's always kind of like intrigued me. It's like, wow, there's probably people right now running code against Aavegotchi that are giving them a big advantage over me for sure.
I mean, that's a great part about this whole game is that the community is here to build the project as well. Like it's a DAO. Like if someone wants to create a third party thing, like they could create it as a third party thing, test it out, and if it's good enough, you could potentially have it implemented into the core features of the game. I think what the devs are doing on like the Hangouts being there, I think is super important for them because as like a UI UX designer, like having that feedback loop from the community to be like, well, like what do you guys think about this? Well, I haven't really thought about. I have heard it Dan say, well, like I haven't really like that could be something like that should probably be that, or like, oh, that's a really good idea. Like using it as like a sounding board to be able to create this project the way that the community wants the project to be created. And I keep telling Taproot this. He keeps saying like some stuff he's waiting for in the contract for the renting is so that like you're not able to like change some of the things on the Gotchi, like the Gotchi's name or like like maybe some of the wearables, or like be able to set that kind of stuff. And he hasn't seen that. I'm like, well, why don't you just make like a forum post about it? Like the whole point is like, well, if you see something like that could be implemented or can make the game better, like you want to make that 3D client to manage your whole Gotchi portfolio, like that could be something that someone creates, or like if we create the DAO Treasury task force and get that kind of money to fund like some projects that we see that need some like core integration, or like we see someone doing something good on the side and be able to like help them like actually build that and then implement it into the game. That like the whole point of like what Dan posted of like, well, like say in like 2025 we're at a $5 billion market cap. Ghost is now like $25, and we have the most like funded like DAO treasury in the world. What do we do? Like how do we? What does the community decide to utilize those funds to help like either the Gotchiverse or the entire world around us? Like how does the community decide how we move forward? And it's not just Pixelcraft anymore. It's everyone that's involved, every ghost holder, because it's all governance with the DAO.
Yeah, I agree with all that 100%. I mean, that's just like going back to like how people are going to reorganize themselves, like that whole aspect of transparency and being able to see everything on chain. Something Dan or Jesse might not see on chain that might be a problem. Like one of us might find that and just put out a proposal and like get that fixed to make the game just better. Because like I think everybody in here wants just the game to work and be better for everyone else. and like our core community members, like they'll put the progression of the game over anything else. Like I personally would put the progression of the game and the spread of the game ahead of like my personal bags, to be honest. Like if in the short term, like I have to give up a little bit just to like make sure the game grows and we get beyond like 7,000 players, I'm okay with that because like all of us in here, like we understand the concept of long-term value and like Master Yin was saying, Aavegotchi tends to attract a lot of analytical and intelligent people. So I think we have the right community backing it. And then just going back to kinship, I was saying how taking care of this thing as a pet is appealing to people, even that just even on the surface level. And then maybe later on they get more analytical and get more into the nitty gritty details of things. And actually, that's why we're all here. We're here to help those people kind of help them transcend into the higher levels of Gotchi, and get more experienced with it. Uh, and yeah, I personally like getting engaged with my Gotchi twice a day. Like I end up spending time on the bazaar, or I'll look at like Aavegotchi stats or something. It brings me to those things twice a day. I was gonna actually throw a question out there. What you guys think of the recent? I don't know if you guys heard with on the recent space, but Dan had mentioned the way kinship is gonna work in the realm might be tweaked a little bit. So like recently, up until now, we thought kinship when you accrue kinship that it's going to be burned. That you're gonna have this alchemical altar, and when you go to the altar, you're gonna essentially burn some of your kinship for alchemica that will be just like sprayed out from this altar. But now we've kind of he's put this thing out where we might not be doing that, and we might be switching to using kinship as a multiplier. So every time you engage with this altar, you're going to have a certain amount of alchemica that's determined by the chainlink VRF that gets sprayed out. And instead of burning like one kinship for a certain amount of alchemica, you'll actually get a multiplier on the amount of alchemica you receive based on your kinship level. So I'm just gonna speculate and say that kinship level might be based on like the different things you get. Like scorn, friendly. I can't remember the other ones, but there's all these different milestones you get with kinship, and I wonder if that's going to be the multiplier that takes effect.
Wow, that's
So what do you guys think about this
crazy.
new
Yeah, I
adjustment?
mean, like, it's so kinship got really serious for me, and that's like why I started looking into like what is a petting service, how do these things work and whatnot, because it's like I thought like, oh well, going into the realm, like I'm gonna have to sacrifice this stuff, and the more of it that I have, either way, this kind of still reinforces that mechanic that like you want to have like high kinship. But like I think it's pretty cool if they do range it like that, where it's like everybody that's in that bucket of like the title for like that particular range kind of gets the same multiplier. I think that's really cool.
I think it's smart.
They also
Go ahead.
mentioned that we're going to be able to. Sorry. They also mentioned that potentially we're going to be able to earn kinship by actually just playing the game in the realm. So that changes the whole petting like dynamic altogether. Because right now, all we can do for kinship is either chug a potion, which is far too expensive for most of us, or be really on top of our petting or using a petting bot. But once we get kinship, even if it's fractional, for actually playing the game, it really does even out everything and changes the use case for kinship, like because you can earn it in a different way.
It was going to be regressionary if you did it. They this current mechanic, if you, for 2 pets a day for every 12 hours, if you're able to be able to like channel every 6 hours, that's 4 times a day. And so you'd be losing, if you did it every 6 hours, you'd be losing 2 kinship a day. So you'd have a lot of like people going to zero if you're really like lending it out and you're burning that kinship. So I think having it as a multiplier incentivizes people to just continually interact with their Aavegotchi and also like participate in more of the channeling, which is one of the main ways that they want people to be like mining, especially off the bat when people don't have the like mining capabilities on their land. That's going to be one of the main ways that people like channel Alchemica into the world and create liquidity for the whole economy to like start off. So having it be a multiplier, I think, is really, really smart because then it's like you're able to bring more liquidity into the ecosystem a lot quicker off the bat.
I have a random question. Do you guys think that there's going to be like, how there's like DAOs right now with respect to, different Gotchi players, and you're seeing all this formation of different DAOs or guilds, but do you think there's going to be a similar formation on the liquidator side?
I'm not 100% sure because the liquidators are burnable NFTs. So maybe players who are always liquidators might want to organize, but I don't know how much of an organized effort that would be. I could see it working if you're not using the like you have to figure out, I guess, whatever your governance token is for that guild, like a liquidator guild. But then I also feel like if this game is successful, players will, graduate from being liquidators to Aavegotchi. So that guild would always be like constantly churning with turnover of members. And I think that would be great, actually, but I don't know.
I mean, I don't think some of these bigger guilds are going to have enough Aavegotchi for all their players. So they're going to have to be like partially Aavegotchi, partially liquidators, and playing both sides of it. And I kind of think that attracts a lot of players. I mean, in the sense of like, okay, you can rent gotchis, but there's obviously not going to be enough gotchis for the amount of players that these DAOs have. So having that liquidator feature just allows them to bring in a lot more users at a base level that could like work their way up to being like really good Aavegotchi players. So they could say like, well, you need to be within your like liquidator stats, you need to have like a 70% like win rate or to be able to rent out one of our Aavegotchi because we need at least 70% or 75% like capacity to make it profitable for us to be renting it out to you or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think with this,
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Happy.
I just think, liquidators will be like a great on-ramp. Even though they're opposing forces, they'll be a great on-ramp to certain guilds who like wish to adopt that, and I think it's only going to help their growth as they can attract more players initially and then help them scale up to like that Aavegotchi, like Golden Road was saying.
Yeah, I think with Discord, all things are possible. Like Discord changed gaming, in so many communities. Like, so people will, play both sides. People will coordinate on the liquidator side. There will be moments to play that it may be more fun even to play the liquidator side. I think the liquidator aspect could potentially turn even gotchi guilds against each other in a messed up way, right? Because like ultimately, like the liquidators are out there to hunt gotchis and take their alchemica. So, this will affect the economics of the game. And I think that like what Golden said was really like, probably what's going to happen where like guilds will do both sides and like maybe, because just the information that you will get from playing the liquidator side is probably going to worth having some portion of your guildies like specializing in that or, playing that side of the game to even just get info to protect your own stashes. So it'll be like spy games. Like, I think it's such a deep element and mechanic to the game. And like, I think we brought it up before, but it's even cooler how it's like, Diablo 2, like hardcore mode where, there's going to be liquidators that like survive like the test of time somehow. It'll be like a trophy almost, like if you can keep one for a long time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, going back to Diablo, I know we have David Freed who actually worked on Diablo 2, so I wonder if some of those concepts will kind of make their way over to Aavegotchi. As far as like liquidators forming guilds on their own, I think if it's a valuable proposition to do that, like if it is profitable to attack gotchis, we'll probably see more of this in the guild, but I mean, sorry, in the grid gameplay when we're outside of the Citadel. It's supposed to be a lot more competitive, and I feel like ambushing gotchis in certain areas of the grid is going to be a thing. There's going to be certain areas of the grid where you might actually know that you have to go out there with at least, 2 or 3 Aavegotchis, and maybe one of them's a tank to help defend you. Otherwise, you're just going to get rolled by liquidators because it'll just be such a valuable proposition to create a guild out there somewhere and just kind of camp out and wait for Aavegotchis to feast on.
Yeah, because if you're a liquidator guild, you could use all of the alchemica that you harvest from your members as your treasury, like to start out. So that would be interesting. But it's also funny to think that there's going to be like bad neighborhoods that we're all going to slowly, the market's going to determine it, but we'll get to see it like evolve. Like, oh yeah, that area of the grid, no, you shouldn't go over there at night unless you have a whole bunch of, unless you're rolling with your crew and you got that energy gun and the cyborg eyes so that you know that you're good, It's crazy.
Yeah, 100 on that. And actually that makes me think, right? Because like guilds that have good treasuries are organized because you can build defense and walls and whatnot outside in the grid. So like neighborhoods will be defined by like how much a particular DAO or player or guild like puts into that neighborhood in the grid. So yeah, that's totally going to happen because there'll be some places where it's just like just never got going, or like the players that have like access to capital didn't, invest in this part of the grid. And, that's really cool to think about.
Yeah, it's possible.
I wonder, and maybe you guys already know this, and apologize if, if I sound ignorant because I just don't know, but do you think that, there will be liquidators that, will essentially pick and choose, like when it comes to like maybe the Gotchi, like that they want to attack? Like in other words, like if you have liquidators and Gotchis in the same guild, do you think that they're going to be like, kind of friendly towards the Gotchis in that guild and not attack those? And would they attack just other guilds? Like, does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I feel like that's where I was gonna say. I was just gonna add in and say I feel like that's where the guild insignia is gonna come in handy there, because we're gonna be looking at doing non-BRS wearables at some point, and that guild insignia might be really important, especially if like it can be shared with liquidators and Gotchis.
Just so there's no friendly fire.
That also opens up this. Yeah, 100%. Like that also opens up this like whole like underworld of like guilds like organizing raids with their liquidators to take out other guilds. But from what I've seen, like I tried to start a beef between Los Mustachios and the Portal Mages after Los Mustachios won the inaugural guild war. They were very friendly, and I put up a post and I was like, because they were saying Portal Mages was the greatest guild, and I was like, does Los Mustachios have anything to say about that? Hoping that I would get a little beef started, and they were like, no, they're our friends. We're all in the same like league. So it's like, oh, all right. I guess, yeah, we are really friendly. Okay.
You can't instigate us.
It's good for content if we have some wars, though. I want to be a war correspondent in the Gotchi verse.
Oh, it'll happen. Alchemica will make people do things.
Yeah, it's all fun and games until we need to, fight over the same Alchemica.
Yo, guys, friends, there's a problem here that it's 3:30 a.m. where I am, so I'm gonna have to leave. But it was so nice hearing some strategy and tactic to brighten up my Sunday blues.
Yeah, Fred, thank you for joining. We do this every week. I mean, it's probably really late for you, but if you're ever around on Saturdays, we host the Gotchi Gang Hangout. That's at 10 p.m. UTC.
I've been around.
That's probably a little earlier for you. Yeah, jump on stage whenever you're there. I love those hangouts because like I feel like we get good communication from the dev team, but this weekend was our 18th consecutive hangout, and I feel like the flow of information is it's like a spigot that just got opened up because Coder Dan and Jesse are nerds about this, and I love that. So it's easy to kind of like talk with them and accidentally get them to say stuff. Because like we haven't gotten like the information we've gotten in these hangouts has been greater than what I feel like we've gotten in terms of light papers or posts, because they give us clarity on things. So, thank you so much for coming through.
Yeah, thanks again, Fran.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Have a good night.
Thank you, man. Good night.
Also, Alpha Ghost 1, you've been on stage for a while, so I just want to give you an opportunity to talk, man, because you've been so patient.
Thanks for jumping on. So I was just going to ask about guilds, guys. I haven't got I can't remember the other British guy that was talking earlier. I think he left now as well, but I'm kind of new to this as well. Going to follow the same strategies here by the sound of it to get in with the land auctions and the bid to earn and all that. But in terms of getting into a guild and finding a guild that's appropriate for your level and all that sort of crap, how do we do that? There's not a lot of information on that in Discord.
Yeah, so like at this point, I would say guilds right now are based on the wearables that later, Dr. Wagney. Yeah. So I was gonna say, just as in regards to guilds, they're basically based around wearables right now. So I would look at what wearables you have, first of all, because that's an easy way to get into a guild that already has it. Just start engaging with those community members. And then after that, you can also look at once you own some land, if your land is in that certain area of that guild, and then in addition to that, if there's specific community members, like I know maybe this is just all sounds really general, but if you have a certain affinity of what certain community members are doing, because you're totally right in the sense that there isn't a lot of information out on guilds right now. But I also do know that in the wiki, I believe it does also list all the guilds as well and like some of their general information around that. If you guys have anything else to add in on that, like go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just early with that. I think people are still getting organized. The easiest construct seemed to be the wearable aspect, right? Like people kind of saying like, hey, we're anonymous guild for the anonymous mask, or like, we're the mustachios. All you need to get in is a mustache. And I think that those types of guilds are great. And like I plan to personally be in multiple wearable guilds, because I think to me the wearable guilds will bind all of the DAOs and guilds together ultimately, right? Because it's this commonality of like, something that's like, you have in common, and you can be a part of that, but like still maybe be part of another guild that's like more of your core group of people. I think hanging out in the Discord and like just hanging out in the chat, like, Hefe made a great point. If you see somebody that you kind of vibe with, kind of what they're saying or whatever, and like you can ask them what guild they're in. But I think that there's going to be a Cambrian explosion soon of guilds. I think there's probably a lot of people in the shadows, like getting organized. I know that I myself and Master Yang, we have been working and are almost ready to kind of come out to the public with our guild and whatnot. And so I think it's just really early, and that's why you find kind of a lack of information. It seems like the flow is, though, when a guild organizes, they register and they update the wiki accordingly. And, even like Hefe said, there will be guilds even just based on, neighborhoods, stuff like that. But the list is probably your best bet for now. And I think that list will grow, pretty big soon. And really cool things will happen. Me and Master Yang were talking about kind of like how it works, with DAOs now, where, DAOs and Ethereum may be holding each other's token or treasury. I could see that happening for guilds within Aavegotchi. And stuff like that. So I think in the end, we'll have a very robust guild ecosystem with ways to discover and explore and search for what suits you. But all of that, it's so early that everybody's forming it. Like for us particular, we're not really about a wearable. We're more about, just Aavegotchi in general, and with a little bit of like leaning towards like having developers or people that are interested in developing and creating content come join the guild and kind of specialize in building things for the world and stuff like that. And so I think there'll be all types. You're just really early.
Nice, thanks.
Yeah, and like Master was saying, nothing wrong with joining multiple guilds and just
wiki
feeling them
to
out.
the top of the space.
Oh yeah, golden through that. Yeah, that's actually a great link to check out there. What he threw up there, that actually has like a neat description of each one, and it has about roughly 21 guilds on there right now. So you have like a good selection as well as a point of contact. So you can reach out to that specific person on Discord.
It's also exciting to think about that we will probably get another wearable auction prior to the launch of the game, or after, it seems, from what the team has hinted at. So it's like there's going to be new wearables. Oh, crap. I forgot to ask Zbot to give it. He was supposed to give us concepts this weekend, and it completely slipped my mind because he promised he would. I'll get him next weekend on that. But we're going to have new wearables, so I can't, it's fun to think like what these new wearables are going to be, and then potentially what guilds will form around them, like the Gotchi Bulls. That couldn't happen without the second like wearable launch that we did in the summer, which like kind of gave life to this new guild. So it'll be really interesting to see which wearables come out and who utilizes what for their guild, or not even using wearables for the guild, using a different NFT and using the wearables for like DAO inclusion or stuff like that.
Do you think there'll be like a full latex bodysuit with the mouth zipper?
I would bet that there's probably going to be a saddle chair, but I don't know. That's what I would lean for. I would want a saddle chair pet wearable for Coder
Yeah,
Pants.
saddle
since he
chair
cooks so
pet.
much. Yeah, there might be yoga pants because they were talking about more wearables that are lady inclusive. So maybe some yoga pants.
And the red dress from the Matrix, the lady in the red dress.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
That'd be a good mythical for sure.
I need a mythical so bad. I've been looking at them like just here and there, and it's like, dang, I could have got these for so much cheaper like 2 or 3 months ago, like 1/3 of the price, and with Ghost being 1/3 of the price as well. So it's like, dang,
I
I
snuck
should have like.
one,
I think
one mythical in before things got crazy. I got myself a Elite laptop like when they were still like 4,000 Ghost. And that's the
man.
era you're talking about.
Dang.
That was
That's
like,
a good deal.
Yeah, I mean, dude, like I wish, like you said, I wish I aped like twice as hard. Like, I was like, damn it. When I put all the numbers up on Excel, like, wearables are some of the best performing parts of the Aavegotchi portfolio that I put together. And I just don't see it really changing. There's been a lot of flex in the market. Like I've seen things bouncing around. But until they really start dumping more wearables on the market, I think that like it's a pretty, okay bet, especially because of the utility that you get out of the item. Like I've been dying for like the arm cannon, like that. What's it called? I think it's like, what is it, like the cyborg like arm, the plasma gun.
The laser,
Oh, the
laser
mechanical?
gun, I think.
Yeah, man, that thing is like, oof. And like I see it coming down in price a little bit, but then the price of Ghost has gone up, and so it's like it's pretty nuts. It's pretty much like a used Honda Civic, like, and it's like it's funny to think about. But Aavegotchi NFTs, one of the things I always harp on is like, dude, these things produce yield. I don't have many NFTs with the exceptions of the ones that are now like starting to get into tokenomics and trying to issue some kind of like, potential like revenue split or whatnot. But like Aavegotchi's is the only one I'm like keep ticking against the principle. And I think that that's really cool. And wearables definitely helping that.
Yeah, and we haven't even seen like the full utility of wearables yet. Like nobody has played with their wearables yet. I mean, we know all the different rarities, but I don't think all like the OP stats and OP boosts and attacks per se are going to be just like mythical godlike wearables. Dan had actually hinted that some of the wearables are going to be just like commons and uncommons that have these like really OP moves to them. So like I've been really hesitant to sell any of my wearables because I have a decent amount of commons and uncommons, but I've been very hesitant to sell any of them.
If like you could have a contract that like would allow people to use an item and then revoke use of the item or revoke, use to like, lands that the guild might own, all that kind of stuff, like blows me away. First of all, because it's being designed for a game. Like I don't, the implications that it has for other things, I think are pretty deep and just almost like too deep to really like have a superficial conversation about it. But like in Aavegotchi itself, like that is like badass because like you will be able to like save up for these, like how, like sometimes I look at the godlikes and I'm like, God, that's so like out of reach. But then I'm like, holy crap, like with guilds, it's not anymore at all. Like the guild can just go buy godlike, put it on the bench, go buy the godlike, axe, from the Portal Mage set and like just, hey, the best guild player this week gets to use it or whatever.
I
Yeah,
wonder
that
if
would be
the
very
Gotchi,
interesting. But
I wonder if the Gotchi Lodge is going to have some mechanics around that where you can deposit an item in the lodge and that's ready to use for the guild. Like I really wonder about that because I know it seems like the lodge is going to be centered around like bringing people together and it's